Thank you for tuning in Voice of Reason Boston on WEZE 590 AM. Today, this morning, we have Danielson Tavares. He is the Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Boston, and he'll be talking to us all about what he does and fighting for diversity in the City of Champions. Speaking of City of Champions, we want to send a shout out to Rachel Rollins for winning the primaries, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, and Councilwoman Liz Miranda. We are so proud. We are so happy that the city and the people of Boston exercised their rights and voted and made it happen for these women to come into the forefront to service our community. And we just want to send a shout out and thank them very much for what they do. And Danielson, right?
That's right.
Also known as Donnie.
Yeah.
How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Can you just give us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I am the Chief Diversity Officer of Boston. And sort of, to put it into words, my role is really to make sure that the city of Boston is as representative of the people that we serve. Most people don't realize that the majority of folks in Boston are people of color.
Right.
Even when I'm traveling around the country and sort of ask folks, well, what do you think of Boston? It's sort of this old sort of stereotype of what Boston used to be, but not realizing all sort of the changes that have happened in the meanwhile. So the time in 2014 when Mayor Walz took over, 37% of our workforce were people of color. At the time, about 52% of the Boston population were people of color. And so the task was make sure that we're getting representation in city government that reflects the people that we serve.
Okay.
A lot of conversations around whether this should be an internal, external role, what would the office be, and I think we decided that if you're gonna be talking about diversity and be at the forefront of it,
right,
then it's important to have the CEO of the city who believes in sort of diversity. And so the first thing we did was we posted all of our demographic information online so the public can join us in this journey. So if you visit cityofboston.gov/diversity, we have a public-facing dashboard, and so you can tap into the mayor's office, see how we break down in terms of race, gender, tenure, and that goes for every city department. And the reason for that is that sort of transparency piece. How do we make sure that folks have the trust in government, and putting that information out there that updates on a monthly basis, holds ourselves accountable, and it's accountable to the folks that we serve as well. So
that's good to know that, and I would encourage people in the community to check it out, because oftentimes they may be people of color working for the city of Boston, but how many of them are in leadership roles where young people can see that, we are doing something in the community as well. And we're not just working down the chain, but we're also in the forefront where the young kids can see us.
Sure. So I think when we talk about diversity, it's twofold, right? We have, representation, and then we have diversity in terms of inclusion, right? What does that mean for folks of color beyond getting hired? What are their experiences like? What are their tracks in terms of being able to move up the organization?
Right.
How do we make sure that we're tracking all of that? So beyond the numbers game of making sure that we have representation is a real deep dive look to make sure, what does the cabinet of the mayor's team look like? What do our department heads look like? What does the leadership look like? And in measuring all these metrics, we're looking at all that. So making sure that we have folks in leadership positions. What I will say is, that's sort of been the knock on sort of when we talk about diversity as well. Folks aren't going into high-paying positions, and my pushback would be, I would say there's a lot more work that we need to do there in terms of getting folks into what I would say mid-level manager positions and sort of higher ranking positions. But at the same time, if we have census tracts in Roxbury with $18,000 a year median household income, I think a $40,000 a year job goes a long way.
Right.
Yes, it's not perfect in terms of where they want to be, but we can certainly use those jobs as opportunities for folks to come into the city, use that as an opportunity for them to land a solid job where they're going to be getting a pension, they're be getting benefits,
right.
They know they're going to be getting a salary, and that's how you start to sort of get folks out of poverty and sort of,
Get your feet wet.
you get your feet wet, you get your experience, but also how do we make sure that on our end that, there is a real track record for folks to move up the organization. So I still think there's a lot more work to do, but very proud of the work we've done in the first 4 years.
You should be. Let's try to backtrack a little bit. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And, your educational background, and how did your family shape you growing up to be where you are today?
Sure. So I was actually born in Cape Verde, in
Okay.
Praia. Came to this country when I was 2 years old. I am the youngest of six, 3 boys, 3 girls. And I've lived in the Dorchester area my entire life. It's funny, the 3 houses I grew up on are all on the same street.
Okay.
So I'm literally,
Wow.
my whole childhood is just
right
right
there.
there in front
Yeah.
of me, which is pretty cool. Surrounded by family. So I've been in Dorchester my entire life. Started off in BPS, attended the Emerson School. From there, I went to Nativity Prep, which is a Jesuit school over in Jamaica Plain. They service low-income kids in the city of Boston.
Okay.
They're a tuition-free school. I believe they're the only tuition-free school in the city of Boston. And from Nativity, I ended up going to Thayer Academy in Braintree, which was a private school. Very eye-opening experience. The first time in my life where I really was taken out of my comfort zone and put in a situation where, race became an issue for me, and really thinking about sort of how that affected my experience going through school and really shaped who I became later on in life. From there, I ended up at UMass Amherst State University. Did the 5-year plan at UMass Amherst just because, I wasn't focused
Right.
or doing the right things, but got through that and recently just finished up my master's at Boston University.
Oh,
So, yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. I know you're the Chief Diversity Officer, but did you have any roles previously before you got to
Sure.
there?
Yeah, so I've had a couple roles. So I actually started my career in the State House as the Chief of Staff for then State Representative Carlos Enriquez, and transitioned to the Mayor's office now in 2014, where I started my career as an advance. And this is really a good story in terms of pipelines and what Mayor Walsh has done in making sure that folks are moving up this pipelines. Started my career in advance. From advance, I moved on to a special assistant with the mayor, which essentially means you travel with the mayor everywhere you
Right.
go. So, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., you're just zigzagging through the city with the mayor. You're sitting in the meetings, you're moving on agendas.
Right.
And that could be, substance abuse issues that folks want help with, housing issues, public safety, education, all the issues that we sort of talk about. From then, I sort of went on to do more project management for the city, but really having, I think what really shaped my experience was my special assistant role with the mayor, and in that we really got a lot of one-on-one time. Whether it's in car rides or whatever it was, and we just talked about issues,
right.
and it was real because he would say, Donnie, like, what's it like for you going through
Right.
the situations that you go through, the things that you deal with, and I could just have a real honest conversation with him about, like, Mayor, no, like, this is how it really is. And those were good moments for us, and just being able to have real solid
And establish
conversations.
a personable relationship.
And establish that relationship, right? So I think there was good value there both ways in terms of mentoring me and really being able to have someone there from the community that could share this perspectives with him, because he may not always be hearing it to say, hey, Mayor,
Right.
when I'm going home, I'm hearing this. When I get here, I'm hearing this. Here's what I'm seeing from my perspective, right? So I think he really values that.
That's good.
So yeah, that's essentially where. So from that special assistant role, went on to be a project manager, and when the chief diversity officer role was open, the mayor tagged me for that role. So.
And how important is that? We just talked about getting your feet wet.
Yeah.
How you had to work in different various positions. It wasn't something that was just handed down to you.
Sure.
You actually had to work and put your best foot forward. How important is that for people to know that even though it's not quite the salary that you're looking for, you have to start somewhere to get where you want to go? Because I know for me, where I was working for the DA's office with a master's degree, and I took a major cut in salary. And we all know working for the public, they're especially public service jobs. They don't pay that well,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
when you're helping someone and you love what you do, that kind of like doesn't
Right.
affect you
Right.
at some point. But it is important to let people know that you have to start from somewhere to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's, I come across a lot of folks who come to me looking for career advice, and sort of, I kind of have the same advice for most folks that come across my path. Working in the public sector, you're not there to make the money. Despite what folks think about, public servants, they're folks who deeply care about their community. Oftentimes, they're taking that pay cut sacrifice because they care so much about their community. And at the same time, when it comes to putting your best foot forward, it's another conversation we have with folks. Who you work for and where you work matters. When I had to make a decision in terms of, do I take the money or do I take the role with the mayor?
Right.
I think for me it was, here's an opportunity to showcase my talent to a brand new
Absolutely.
administration.
Absolutely.
And so I value that more than sort of the short-term goal of taking the money, because I knew I could work hard. I knew I was smart, and I knew I could do the work. And so I just needed a chance. And that chance was for me to showcase my abilities directly to the mayor. And so I chose to take that role because I was thinking more long-term.
Right.
And so I think, most folks look at money, and it's super important. Housing prices are going up, education. But I always tell folks at the end of the day, you want to think about what your long-term strategy is,
Right.
and making sure that you're positioning yourself to be able to get there. So
That's good. I think it's very important for people to know that as long as you have the patience, the faith, and the perseverance to get to where you're gonna go, where you want to be, eventually it will have to happen for you.
I find that most folks who are committed end up getting to where they want to go.
Exactly.
And I tell folks it may take a little bit of time. There may be some frustration along the way, but if you're really after it, I find that most folks, they end up getting there and they end up satisfied at the end of the day.
Yeah, they are. So your role right now, what steps do you take to complete these goals that you're trying to put forth for the community?
So it's multifaceted. So I think in order to accomplish the goals of the community, we need to continue to build trust with the community.
Right.
Because I think that's one area where I think government can do better, is restoring that trust. And I think the way you restore that trust is by, as you diversify and continue to work with individuals who care about the community. And so, I always tell folks, if there's a housing issue, it's important that we have folks who are advocating on housing policies that come from within the community. Because when it's your neighbor who's talking to you about housing, you're more apt to accept the information, and sort of talk about the issues. But we need folks who understand these issues, who have gone through them.
Right.
And so it's tough to have folks who are doing policy on housing who aren't experiencing difficulties or experiencing gentrification. If you don't have folks in education policy who understands the barriers when you don't have quality education across the
Right.
board, then you lose that lens when you're having policy, right? So for me, it's how do you get those lenses at the decision-making table so that the outcomes are affecting the people that they should be affecting. So as much as I try to diversify, I try to make sure that we're looking at Boston residents, we're looking at folks who are passionate about the issues that they care about, and we're looking at folks who haven't always sort of been on our side in terms of they may have butt heads with the city in the past. I think that's one thing we've tried to change is, to our critics, let's sit at the table and figure out how to move the issues forward.
Right. And so for people who are tuning in and then watching us on Facebook, why is it so important for people in the community to know that diversity is top priority in our city? So
when I hear diversity, I hear it in sort of two contexts. I hear it in the business, in terms of the business community, and sort of in the public sector where we are. It's unfortunate that a lot of times when we hear diversity, you hear corporations say, well, we analyze the numbers and we realize we're missing a huge market share, and we realize where the trends are going, so we need to diversify in order to protect that bottom line. I don't think you can look at it that way when in the public sector or when it comes to government. I think the way we look at it is it's servicing our clients,
right?
And us diversifying at the end of the day delivers a better product for the residents of the city of Boston. As I mentioned, we're 53% city of people of color. We speak, a whole lot of languages in the city of Boston.
Yes.
And so if we're not servicing the entire population, then at the end of the day, we're not doing our best to serve the residents of the city of Boston.
I think I think we came a long way. I think there's more work to be done, but we're better than we were before.
Yeah.
And I feel like the city of Boston is a rich community. It's a rich city, and it is important that we have people in leadership positions that represent the community, and it's not only one race, because it wouldn't be fair.
Absolutely.
And that's where you get trust comes in. People don't really trust because it's only always one person, one race that's always leading. But it's important for every race to come in and it's for the youth as well. I remember I remember when President Obama was being inaugurated for president, and I can hear people talking how now their children can look to the future and say, I can be president too.
Yeah.
So it's very important that our city reflects the people that we are serving.
And to that point, if you look at these elections, it's exactly to your point.
Right.
Because I think what you had there is, the candidates that did win were able to attract, I think, a group of folks who haven't traditionally been involved. Folks who feel like they've been left behind. Folks who feel like their voice doesn't matter. A lot of the things you hear around why young brown and black boys and girls aren't voting is because, it doesn't matter who they vote for, Democrat, Republican, their situation is still the same. So I think what you saw in this election was, folks gravitate to the candidates that are doing the door-to-door, the face-to-face that they know from the communities have gone through the issues, like the Liz Mirandas and like the different candidates that are in this race. So I think it's inspiring to see that.
Yeah.
And I think we need to continue that momentum.
I think we do too, and it's very important. And it's important for the community to know how much power they have. Some people had their doubts, and some people thought, this person was going to win because they had a lot of backing, but it's not. It's not about the endorsements. It's not about how many people you have helping you vote. It's the community. There's a T-shirt out there that says, I forgot what the word is verbatim, but it said, your seat is not safe.
Right.
And it's so important for the community to know that they have power. They have, if they can elect these people to come into office, just imagine how much more you can do by just voting. So that was a wonderful, I was so happy. That was wonderful for me to see the community to show up and show out like that.
And at the end, when they do that, you can guarantee that the services delivered are going to be better, and that there's going to be more attention paid to those districts. So.
And I think a lot of people who are currently sitting in their seats now know that the community is not playing, and they're going to they're going to start working twice as hard to make sure that whatever the community needs, it's going to be given to them.
Yeah, I think if one thing this election's done, it's put folks on guard.
Yes, absolutely. I know that it's important. Excuse me. How important was it for you to get to complete the partnership? I know it was a long-year professional development forum that you taught by some leading experts. How important was that?
So the partnership's a program run by Carol Folt around professional development, largely focusing around people of color in various industries, the experiences we go through. And I think the reason it was important for me is that the partnership really creates a safe space for people of color in the industries to talk about a lot of the issues that we sort of go through.
Right.
And I think, how to navigate those issues. And I think it's important that we offer these resources. One thing I hear in the City of Boston all the time in my role is the need for more professional development opportunity for City of Boston employees. Number one, to be able to move up the ranks. So if we talk about pipelines, how do we make sure that employee who's been with the City of Boston for 10 years but doesn't necessarily have that degree or that certification to get them to that manager level, then we need, as the city, to make sure that we're putting those resources ahead of those folks. So whether it's certifications that they need to do, let's make sure that they get those. Whether it's a degree, let's help them get back to college and get that done, right? And so making sure that we even the playing field, just in terms of support. So one thing that we've actually done is in this space is we launched what's called employee resource groups. And the employee resource, the City of Boston, we have a big issue in terms of, we tend to operate in silos. So if you're in the transportation department, you're working in the transportation department.
Right.
If you're in education, you're working in education. And when you're talking about equity, you can't tackle these issues in silos, because if you're talking about equity, you're talking about public safety. You're talking about, what does that mean for community police relations? If you're talking about equity, you're talking about education. How do we make sure we have quality education across the board?
Right.
And so if we're interacting in silos, and then we can't properly tackle these issues. And I think what the employee resource groups has done, it's created safe spaces for employees to be able to break out of those silos.
Okay.
Work on issues collaboratively. And so it's something that we've recently launched, but it's kind of sprung and sort of taken off. So, for example, we have an LGBTQ group that's formed. We have a Latinx group that's formed. We have a whole bunch of organizations that's formed. We're working on public speaking for our employees. We're working
excellent.
on having a mentoring program for employees of color, so that you have that person that can sort of guide you through your career,
like a mentorship, because it
Yeah,
is
like a
important
mentorship.
that once you get into a position or in the workforce, you always need that extra
Yeah,
step.
absolutely.
And not only that, it helps you excel to the next higher up position that is available for you.
Absolutely.
And I know you also you prepare like career fairs.
Yeah.
How do you pick the jobs that come out
Sure.
for the career fairs? Are you looking for? I know you want to target the community and different ethnic backgrounds, but how is it set up? Do you pick like a company to come in and you look at
Sure.
what they're looking
Yeah.
for? How does that
So
work?
I think we try all of it, right? So we do a whole bunch of things. So the first thing we do is so we do these neighborhood fairs in every neighborhood of the city. We try to look at tracks to understand what those demographics look like. So,
Okay.
for example, in East Boston, a lot of the service jobs in East Boston are sort of in the food industry,
Okay.
right? And so that doesn't necessarily mean that every corporation we want to take over there is going to be in that sector, but we try to make sure that the population matches and kind of fits, what we're targeting.
Right.
Beyond that, sort of, just give you an idea, we have about 45 employers who participate in our job fairs. They range from, we have Encore, the new casino that's coming up.
Oh wow.
We have Bank of America. We have had GE. So we've had the major corporations,
Yes.
but we've also had more entry-level jobs, whether it's a new eatery that's open that's looking for employees. So it ranges,
Okay.
and so we try to have every job across the spectrum, just because our community is so diverse. But I think what we've tried to do is change the narrative in terms of not making sure every job fair isn't downtown, every job fair isn't in the seaport. And so I sat down with GE when they first came, and they said, well, what can we do differently? And I said, do something in Dorchester, Roxbury.
Right.
Right. And so for us, it's when we do these career fairs, we're bringing them to the neighborhoods.
Right.
So folks get in the habit of seeing Encore in Roxbury, Encore in Dorchester, these different corporations in Dorchester, and these are good jobs. For example, Encore is hiring blackjack dealers, and they're starting off at $60,000 a year,
Oh wow.
plus tips. So they pay for you to go
Yeah.
to blackjack school, and then you're landing a $60,000 a year job.
Wow.
And that's the requirements of GED. So when we talk about good paying jobs, that's what we need to do more of.
Now, how can people know more about that when the career fair starts and those types of jobs are looking for people? How often are they publicized so that
Yeah.
people can get access to them?
Yeah, so I think that's what we need to do better. Traditionally, I think we've focused on traditional means of getting information out, whether that's the Globe, the Herald.
Right.
But folks just aren't getting their information the
some
same
reason,
anymore.
yeah.
It's funny, I actually had an opening in my office, and I interviewed a young woman, and she said to me, I have 15,000 Snapchat followers. And I said to myself, well, that's just not what I'm looking for. But then when I thought back about it, and I said, wait a minute, she has 15,000 Snapchat followers. That's one avenue we're missing in terms of
Right.
if we want to communicate with folks, right? So we're doing everything from Facebook, Twitter. We even do a little bit of old school, and we door knock and flyer
Oh, wow.
around the neighborhoods when the job fair is coming up. We'll do a 1 mile radius in all directions and just flyer the neighborhood.
That's
We're doing
excellent.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole nine. And then I think
And
what
they
we need
can
to
also go on to the website too.
yeah, and they can go on the website, cityofboston.gov. But what we need to do is continue to penetrate, not just on the job stuff in terms of getting the information out. I think in everything we do, whether it's education, economic development, everything, we need to penetrate deeper in terms of getting the information out. I find that half the time my job is connecting the resources.
Right.
Is connecting person A to point
Person
B.
B, yeah.
Right. And so if we can penetrate deeper in terms of making sure that, and I'm glad the city of Boston is doing this now, translating their content.
Yes.
Because everyone in the city of Boston doesn't speak English.
Right. I know a lot of Haitian.
Absolutely.
Haitian community.
So now one thing we've done is we've established funds for all departments to be able to translate their literature and content, which is great. But we need to continue to do more, whether it's ethnic media,
Right.
Get into the weeds and making sure that folks are getting information. I think that's how we're going to continue to penetrate.
Well, anything I can do to help to let the community
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I'm more than happy to do so, because this broadcast is for the community, is to share and let people know what's going on, because what good am I if I can't help the people that's in my community? So I think that's a wonderful thing that the city of Boston is trying to do, and the mayor as well, is putting these people in our community to talk about these things,
Right.
and not just any type of people, but people with different backgrounds, people that speaks different languages. You can cater to the Cape Verdean community. I can cater to the Haitian community, and we have a lot to offer. So that's the richness
And
about
I think
our.
part of it can get messy when you do that, but I think having that that back and forth with individuals who, for the most part, want the same outcomes. They just may disagree on strategy of how to get there.
Of how to do it,
do we get those folks in the room? And I think having them all in the room at the end of the day, whether it gets a little messy or not, you're delivering a better product. So
Communication is the key, and
Absolutely.
we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there. And tell us a little bit more about yourself. What else do you do in the community? I know you were the board of trustee for the Nativity Preparatory School.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Nativity Prep, which I actually graduated from, is a small school in JP.
Okay.
They service, they just added the 4th grade, so they now service boys between the 4th and 8th grade. It's really for low-income families. A lot of the students that come into Nativity are coming behind, so there's a lot of work to catch these kids up. But Nativity was really, when I talk about sort of my path and what changed in my life, it was really Nativity. 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm in class.
Wow.
3 to 5 p.m. I'm playing sports. 5 to 7 I'm at dinner, and 7 to 9 I'm doing homework. And so I'm getting home at 9:30, and I'm right in bed getting ready for the next day. And there's really no time to get in trouble when you're doing that. At an early age, we're taught community service. So while we're in class Monday through Friday, Saturdays we're out doing community service. So that's something that was drilled into me early. So yeah, Nativity's a terrific school. They're continuing to grow.
And it's good for young boys to see you too.
Yeah.
You started off in that school,
I did.
and now you're contributing back into the school.
Yes.
And it's important not only that you work for the city of Boston, but you actually are still doing work.
Yeah.
Because had it not been for that path, you wouldn't be where you are now.
Absolutely.
So-
and I know that, so that's why it's important to
Yeah,
do
it's
that.
important to know that. And you were also on the issue of Color Magazine. How was that? What kind of
Fun.
what was your experience?
I always get nervous in those scenarios. It's weird, right? Like the mayor always says to me, like, you shouldn't be nervous if you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And it's
Like me.
right? But it's just human nature, I guess. But
Right.
it's pretty cool to be with folks who are doing it in their industries.
Okay.
To talk about the challenges they have, to share with you things that might be working. I know one thing folks have been super excited about is our demographic dashboard, our employee dashboard. I know cities call us all the time around how do we do something similar, right? And why would you even put that out there?
Right.
So yeah, these initiatives like the Color Magazine, they do a great job spotlighting folks, leaders in that industry, making sure that folks are aware of the great work that's going on, but also talking about like the need to make sure that they're improving these industries while they're there. And as Dawn Frazier, one of the hosts, mentioned, the need for folks of color, once they get in these positions, to make sure that they're pulling up the next person.
Yes,
Right?
that is absolutely true. And if you want to read more about Danielson on the Color Magazine, you can go to colormagazine.com and you'll learn more about him and what he's doing. And is there any upcoming events that are happening in Boston or any
Yes.
career fair that you can invite people who are in the community?
Yes, I need to get you some dates, but there's some pretty cool events coming up.
And I can put them on my Facebook page.
Yeah,
too.
so I've talked a lot about people diversity. But procurement is one thing that's huge on my mind. How do we make sure more businesses of color are getting access to some of these state and city-owned contracts?
Right.
So for me, that's sort of next phase, which is 2 for 1 for us. Number one is if you can support that small business, and we know small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and they hire locally, then you're
That's
now
true,
supporting
too.
that business and you're supporting that individual that's now getting hired within the community. So I think we need to do several things there. Number one is make sure that businesses of color understand when contract and opportunities are coming up with the city of Boston. And that's something the city can do better, just having access information out there. And then the second thing is I think when you register as a minority-owned business, whether it's with the city or the state, that needs to mean something. And right now it doesn't. So, what does that mean? Do you have access to an inventory of just states saying, hey, here's where contracts are coming up? Do you have the ability to see what businesses exist out there? For example, if you have a glass repair company and you're too small to take on a city-owned contract, how do you then see who else is doing it out there so you could potentially do a joint venture?
Right.
Like but I think that's what the space where the city can be helpful in helping folks to navigate, and then also everything else that comes with it, the technical assistance, game plan and how to do all that piece. Now, an organization that does that well is the Chamber of Commerce, and I think one thing they're trying to do now is sort of do more work around preparing these companies to succeed.
Okay.
So there's a series coming up. The City of Boston will be partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's going to be a great opportunity for businesses, not just businesses of color, but every business that just wants to start up and figure out.
In the local community that's helping the community.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one. We have a job series coming up. We actually tailored this one around a little bit. We had an intern that came in and said, hey, want to do one for students. So we're actually going to be doing one. I'm going to get the date. I believe it's next Thursday. And so this job fair will be all our regular employers, but they're tailoring it specifically to students, which I think is pretty cool.
Right.
So.
Okay, that's good. Well, Danielson, thank you for coming. We really appreciate you taking your time to come here and just educating us about what you do in the city of Boston, how important it is for the whole community to be represented by individuals with different ethnic backgrounds, different experiences, so that way we can help the next generation that's coming forward. And also I want to thank all my viewers and my listeners for tuning in to Voice of Reason Boston at WEZE 590. Again, this station is for you all so that I can share the information to the community so that we can make change, so we can progress together. And again, we're on the right track. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And see you next Saturday.